What's going on, everybody? Here we are still talking about the situation that has been created by Microsoft and the direction that they are wanting to go with their platform and releasing some of the games multi-plat essentially. We just recently found out for sure that this spring we are going to see Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded, Pentiment, and Sea of Thieves all coming to PlayStation. And it's kind of quite hilarious to watch because there's a lot of people that are upset about this. And there's even some PlayStation gamers extremely excited to play Xbox games that they claimed they had no interest in. But that is definitely not what we're here to chat about today. We're here to kind of explore the conversation of, is this probably a gamble or an act of sheer brilliance for Xbox? Because there is a lot of arguments made on both sides of the argument. And I just wanted to give my 2 cents and maybe give you some food for thought on just what direction this could be taking Microsoft. Now, from what Microsoft has done with releasing these games and not being as, shall we say, as informative as people want them to be, because I thought it was ironic that at the beginning of all this a few weeks ago, Xbox was being too silent. Now they're not talking enough. This is a damned if you do, damned if you don't, unwinnable situation that Microsoft has found themselves in. But let's look at some of the bigger pictures. Let's start with one big elephant in the room, and that is the rising cost of developing games in general. When it comes, like, we've seen the budgets for some of these game companies kind of just balloon into millions and millions of dollars. The money that has to go out and create the workstations and get access to the game engines and everything to create these games keeps spiraling up and up. It is making game development at this point something where somebody has to sit there and decide whether or not that this investment is going to have any return at all. The act of creating a video game in the sake of art is becoming increasingly more difficult with how capitalism is seemingly making game development become a much more costly expense for publishers and developers alike. So I found this interesting article from a website called riseat7.com. At riseat7.com, they do a lot of data collecting, analytics, and SEO research to see how marketing trends affect, shall we say, the internet. They did an article just recently called Xbox Series X versus PS5, World's Most In-Demand Game Console. And they decided to do some analytics and data gathering where they polled 161 different countries on what their preferred platform is between Xbox and PlayStation only. And PlayStation got a whopping 148 countries to say that that is their preferred platform, and Xbox One with only 13. It's interesting to look at the data, though, because Xbox appears to be considerably more popular in smaller countries with smaller economies, but some of the bigger countries, obviously PlayStation won, but in some margins, it wasn't very big. It showed that the presence PlayStation has over Xbox in the UK and the United States was roughly around 57% to 43% on the Xbox side, which shows that Microsoft does have the ability to close the gap on some of these margins. But that leads us to, what has Microsoft already tried to do to close that gap? Now, obviously, things were considerably different in 2013 when they decided to get way ahead of the game and do things now that are absolutely commonplace. So yes, maybe Xbox's move to make some of their games multi-plat might be another example of that. But in the years since 2013, we've seen Xbox become the most pro-consumer console on the market with services like Game Pass, the idea of cross-buy, where if you buy a game on Xbox, you get it on PC or the other way around. We also get the game preview program, which allows developers to be able to deliver games that are still in a state of being built, and essentially the consumer base helps craft that game into a very well-functioning experience. They have a much safer, more reliable network, both in policing the extreme toxicity that can occur on the network, and not to mention better protections of consumers' data, privacy, and also their dollar amount, because Xbox actually has much, shall we say, pro-consumer policies in place when it comes to like doing game returns and dealing with fraudulent behavior on your account. And now we're going to see Xbox take this a step further by now putting games like Diablo, Call of Duty, and other Blizzard titles slowly but surely into the Game Pass subscription service, which is going to definitely show that not only does Microsoft offer a pro-consumer value for their console, but as a result of this, this is their number one exclusive that is going to hopefully drive the needle compared to the other brands, where you will be paying top dollar for those games because the people running the show at this current point in time prefer not to put their titles that drive the needle into their subscription services. That being said, Microsoft now showed in their business update that they do not want to continue trying to be like some of the other guys and monetizing their existing consumer base extremely heavily with microtransactions, raising game prices, raising subscription services, taking away features. Microsoft has come out and said, through Phil Spencer's words, that they do not want to attack their existing consumer base with this kind of behavior. They want to, in turn, attract more consumers into the ecosystem, and that's where we can see them giving just a little bit of taste to some of these players on other platforms by exposing them to games that they claim they had no desire to play. But now we're starting to learn that's further from the truth, considering Hi-Fi Rush is right now appearing to be in one of the top 10 selling games on PlayStation as of this day. But now this brings another point of contention that Microsoft has to deal with. Since their purchase of ABK, we saw a lot of world regulators and including PlayStation decide to scream wolf in saying that Microsoft is somehow crafting some kind of monopolization over the gaming industry. So we can also see that Microsoft in turn is putting games multi-plat, maybe select games, we don't really know. But this seems to be a course of action that is going to be able to chip away at any argument that any world regulator or any other gaming company out there that is going to decide to get in a courtroom and scream and cry about exclusivity and monopolization, that Microsoft will be able to show that they don't have a valid argument, because Microsoft is now crafting a counter argument and showing that there is titles that will remain multi-plat and that there is titles that will become multi-plat as time goes by. And we can honestly say that we've seen where maybe PlayStation's actions haven't exactly put them in the best position. Microsoft said that they want to continue pushing the brand forward by generating revenue and continuing their ability to be able to deliver great gaming in the future. But we can recently see that with PlayStation's overestimation over the success of the PlayStation 5 and rolling back the amount of consoles that they plan to sell, really got investors into a little bit of a tiffle, and we saw PlayStation recently lose $10 billion in stock value because they were like, oops, we got it wrong. People were not going to buy as many PlayStations as we thought they were. But this also could be because of a little bit of shot in the foot and self-inflicted wounds that they've caused over raising prices multiple times on games and services, while again removing features from these services. We also just saw them recently not be able to negotiate a decent deal where consumers would not lose access to their titles that they purchased that were owned by Discovery. And we also see now them screwing around with not only the price, but the availability of certain titles through Crunchyroll, which has really got the animation community really upset with what PlayStation is doing with Crunchyroll. But now can we say that this was a total gamble for Xbox? Maybe it really truly is an act of brilliance, because Xbox has always been their own worst enemy, always doing things before the market is ready. Again, we saw this with the Xbox One. Maybe we're seeing it right now. We even saw it with the birth of Game Pass when people thought that a subscription gaming service was an absolute asinine idea. But now we're seeing PlayStation, with its new leadership, shifting its brand direction, potentially aligning with strategies that Xbox is already using. And we have already seen with the person in charge of PlayStation right now already stating that they are going to expand the reach of PlayStation games onto the PC, mobile, and other platforms, which seems extremely more along line like Xbox's wording, where it's informative, but yet it's not informative. It's left vague very deliberately. And that's what's even funnier about it, is everybody seems to be screaming about Xbox's vagueness, but they're over here just quietly waiting to see what PlayStation's vagueness is all about, which is what we should kind of do as a whole for the gaming industry. Is we should sit back and just wait and see, rather than jumping to conclusions and putting photos all over the internet of our Xboxes in the trash and our GameStop receipts of trading them in. When it comes to the 4 games that Xbox is currently testing the PlayStation market with, what about some of the things PlayStation has had to do in the past? We saw recently like exclusives like Godfall, Stray, and other what people would consider timed exclusives, but you didn't know, show up on the Xbox side. But we've also seen PlayStation put in a position where they had to put MLB The Show on Xbox. Xbox put it in Game Pass, and because of MLB The Show being in Game Pass, which is a published game by PlayStation, it's interesting that MLB The Show has 6 times the players on Xbox than it does on PlayStation, even though it's a PlayStation published game. But now we're also starting to see PlayStation kind of laying out some harsh words for Bungie on, hey, we bought you for a lot of money. You really need to show us that it's going to be a decent return on investment. You need to get your stuff together and kind of stop having all these issues. And that brings us to Marathon. What is going to happen when Marathon is put out? We know that it's going to be multi-plat. Nobody's upset that it's going to be multi-plat. But what happens if this game falls flat on its face? Is this going to really once again show the true colors of how PlayStation is going to essentially flip Bungie upside down because of a failed return on investment, where Xbox had to essentially take the game that was known as Redfall and the debacle that it was, basically take it to heart and just like, oh, well, we know not to do that again, but we're not going to start dissolving Arcane Leon over there, Arcane Austin. They just essentially learned and moved on, but that's because Xbox is in a much better position where they don't live and die based on the games they put out. You see, I always want to tell people, when we talk about the identity of the consoles, when you take games out of the equation, you can fundamentally see that PlayStation is a lot more money hungry and more forwarded towards driving policies that protect PlayStation versus the consumer, and they are not as pro-consumer as Xbox. So when you look at the fundamental differences between the two brands, when you take games out of the equation, you can see that Xbox definitely is at least more aligned with what I'm looking forward to and looking for as a consumer. So at the end of the day, the gamble that Microsoft is deciding to take is wanting to see what's going to happen and how the market is going to react, with the concept that at least one of the bigwigs over at Xbox said of wanting to make Xbox, if not the first place to play, but the best place to play. Let's look at that argument now with Xbox games coming to PlayStation, where Xbox is going to be the environment where you can afford to play it and you can play it first, or you can go over on PlayStation and decide to wait and see if it shows up on your platform, and if and when it does, you will be paying full price, because the odds of seeing that game in any subscription service other than Game Pass are slim to none. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed today's content. I look forward to delivering out more content just like this and continuing the discussion of not only how Xbox and PlayStation are changing in the gaming industry, but how the gaming industry as a whole is in this state of flux, and we have absolutely no idea at all on what is going to happen if in the next 3 to 5 years. But to keep up with it all, just like me, please subscribe, like, comment down below, all the stuff that helps me grow on YouTube and really favor with the algorithm. And as always, please check out the end card on this video, explore my channel, check out the playlist, watch my latest video. And until next time, everybody, I am Centurion 1307, and thank you for watching.